nights on sometime, and we'll talk a little bit about the time when he and I were approached at a bar one night by a couple of girls who knew they knew me but had no idea where they knew me from, and so we settled on I was the deli manager at Winco.
Is that a step up or a step down from the weather guy?
Probably a step up, frankly. And I'm like, yeah, come on in, come see me. It's cool. I'll be there tomorrow. And as fate would have it, I ran into the same girl about 2 weeks later, and she said, either you lied to me or you're a very busy person.
Actually, both.
I'm like, yeah, busted.
For those of you just joining us, this is the Idaho 8-man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com. Paul Kingsbury, Will Hoenike, and Coach Lane Kirkland bringing it to you here tonight. Like I said, Brandon Baney, he took the night off. And let me come and hang out. So let's get right to it, guys. Richfield Hansen is the game that we picked as our game of the week that happened last week. Richfield was behind 38-6, about 8 minutes to go in the third quarter. Tigers scored a touchdown. Around 25 seconds left, 5-yard pass to Scott to Fuchs on fourth down, recovered a squib kick 35 yards down the field, scored a touchdown. Great game in a game that maybe a lot of people didn't really look at to be the game of the week, right, Will?
Yeah, it's not one that would normally leap off the page. You've got Richfield, who's been trying really hard to rebuild that program for the past several years, sometimes co-oping, sometimes playing a JV schedule, and they go down to a Hansen team. They've got Toby Lapp back as their head coach. He's trying to get them moving back forward. And, when you're at home and it's homecoming and you got a 38-6 lead, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. But Richfield had other ideas, and Devin Scott, the sophomore quarterback / defensive back, what a great game he had. His team had a fantastic comeback. And then to score 2 touchdowns in the last 30 seconds of the game to win it, that's pretty tough to top. Yeah.
So coming into this one, let's check out the rest of last week's District 4 Sawtooth Conference. Dietrich came in 3-0, 74-14 over Camas. And then Dietrich's Connor Perkins. This kid, he had his hand in 10 touchdowns. Even in 8-man, that's a lot of to have your hand in that. Dietrich, been up, been down, coming in against Camas County. You kind of see Dietrich bust out 74 points. Coach Kirkland, do you see this trend keep going with the Blue Devils?
If everything's going through Perkins, why not? The kid's got a lot of great talent. He's definitely elusive and making things happen. Looks like he's spreading it around just a little bit as well with 4 touchdown passes and getting everyone else involved. And that's important in balance if you're going to keep winning. So, he's got some amazing things going. And I think we're starting to see some 8-man guys step forward and vie for that MVP, that player of the year thing, if they can keep healthy and keep winning ball games and having amazing performances. That's a lot of T's.
Yeah, there were a lot of amazing performances this week, and we'll talk about a few of them as we go along. I know Will's got a few of those kind of at the tip of his tongue wanting to talk about. Next up in that Sawtooth Conference, Coach, Cary beats Castleford 60-8. Of course, Cary is where you are right now in your classroom. You coached there for years. Tell us a little bit about this 60-8 win over Castleford. What are your thoughts on that?
The Cary boys look very well prepared and executed extremely well. Honestly, it was 44-0 the end of the first quarter. So everything went right. It's and by halftime 60 to whatever, but the boys executed well. And it's hard sometimes to coach those games. Hard to tell how to know what to tell your kids, but they need to do their job. They need to keep doing it well. And Coach Lauer would be the first one to say, and he said it for years, he says, you play your best kids, we'll give you the best game possible that we can. Don't feel sorry for us. We'll keep getting better and improving each week. And that's exactly what he told me. So Coach Seeley's got the boys rolling, and Lowry will recover with those Wolves and live another week. But it was a pretty good night for the Panthers.
Coach, you bring something up there that we've talked about on this show before. Kendrick laying down just some epic beatdowns on teams in the past, and coaches on both sides have they've said, there's only so much you can do. You've got to, if you're way ahead, you've still got to let your kids play football. That's the only way they're going to get better. You can sub out, and Kendrick specifically is good at that. They're very good at getting their other kids in and get them playing. And I have no doubt that Carey was working kids in as well. Just looking at the stat sheet, the number of kids who got to carry the football, got to make tackles and make plays, and there's only so much you can do. And at the end of the day, you got to play the game, and it's hard. I guarantee you, Coach, you've probably had a few games in your legendary career where you're looking up at the scoreboard and you're kind of cringing and you're the team that's ahead. Let's just get this clock running and let's get out of here. But you hit the nail on the head. You still got to play the game. You still got to execute. You still got to challenge your kids to compete.
Coach, let me go ahead.
I think the key to those games, you guys, is making sure you finish with good sportsmanship and a sub down as soon as necessary, as soon as you can, as soon as your guys have got their reps or whatever. And then the other coach, you guys can leave with a good handshake and a good feeling left on the field, and they'll be living another day.
You look at teams that historically have maybe mercy ruled a lot of teams. You've got the Kendricks, the Careys, Dietrich in the past, Oakley, others that I'm not mentioning. They tend to be good for years, right? They have those stretches of years. So how much do you think letting those number 2 and 3 guys play so much more than other teams that maybe don't, blow out another team? How much do you think that really affects your longevity as a powerhouse program? You've got kids that are playing quality minutes, 1-2 quarters sometimes every game.
Yeah, it's key to sustaining your program and keeping it on the tracks is what I call it, and keeping your momentum going forward. And when those guys get better, then you get deep, then you can become a great team. So that's important.
All right, guys, let's head up north now. The North Star League up in District 1. Lakeside and Wallace, both of them undefeated coming in. Jamari Pion he's been waiting a while to catch some passes from his cousin, Charlie. And Will, boy, howdy, did he ever.
Tyson Charlie, he's a basketball star, and they finally got him out on the football field. And you talk about one guy making a difference. Well, it's a team game. Well, this kid's making a very real difference for them. They're looking like a team that is going to have a chance to play deep into November. And they're just explosive offensively. The number of players they have, led by Charlie and Pion and Whitehair and some of the other kids that they got, they can make a lot of plays. And, Jared Young, after the game, I believe it was the Coeur d'Alene Press, he was quoted as saying, Jared Young, for the Wallace head coach, hey, we just got to make more stops on defense. You can't. Right. You can't give up that many big plays to anybody and expect to win, no matter how good you are. And make no mistake, Wallace is a good team, but on that night, Lakeside was better.
Now, Coach, for a game between 2 undefeated teams like this, I thought it might be a little bit closer, especially considering Lakeside, they just had a 2-point lead at halftime, right? 36-34. So going into that second half, what are some things that maybe you didn't actually see the game, but going into it, kind of give us your thoughts on a 2-point lead ended up being that much at the end of the game.
It goes back to a couple of weeks ago. I think we had some shifts at halftime in some games where the second half talk, the second half strategy from the staff and the players came out and just put the hurt on them and said, not in my house, or not today. And that preparation, those talks and adjustments at halftime are critical. And, man, they can make a huge difference in ball games like this, especially if they're close. And that's where I believe leadership kicks in ball clubs, is like, we're not going this way tonight. We're going to win this game. Watch me work. And that's exactly what Lakeside, I think, did, is played some strong defense and then just kept scoring touchdowns. 70 points, pretty good.
Yeah, driving down at the start of the fourth quarter, Wallace's quarterback Miller was intercepted by Jamari at the 3-yard line. Lakeside led 64-48, 6 minutes left. That's how it ended. Now they meet up again in the last game of the season at Wallace. So it'll be interesting to see how Wallace can bounce back from that. Another score up there, Wellpinnet, Washington, 38, and Coeur d'Alene, 34. Wellpinnet, Will, where is that?
If I'm not mistaken, North Central Washington.
Okay. That's a Washington school that I had no idea where it was. So,
Yep, it's
all right,
it's a smaller one. I think it's up around like Hoenike, I think. Don't quote me on it. I know Southeast be better, Oakdale and Endicott and Washtuckna and some of those places.
Right. Of course, Will grew up in Washington. That's why I asked. So, but guys, now it's time for what's going to be probably the fans' most favorite part of the 8-Man Prepcast is Coach's Corner with Coach Lane Kirkland. This week's topic, finishing consistently. Take it away, Coach.
Yeah, so I appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit of knowledge and things that I've gained over the years. And Brandon said, why don't you talk about this here, finishing drives, finishing the games consistently. And so I've got a few things that I put together tonight. We could spend a couple hours, but here's the short version. The short version from some things that I have come up in the past. So some teams get stronger and some begin to fade as the game goes along, as we've just discussed here. So I think some factors that play into finishing drives. Number one is you have to assess your players' talent levels and their abilities, of course. You're only given what you're given, and you got to make do with it. Player discipline to execute every play clean is critical to finishing drives. Talk a lot more about that here in just a second. And number three, experience and time spent by the head coach and offensive coordinators prepping and then managing the offensive series as you go down the field, working hand in hand there. And then, of course, your opponent is going to dictate a little bit as well, finishing those drives and you being able to score or not, or go 3 and out. So number one here, player talent level and ability. Kind of want to break each of these down here. As a coach that you got to assess what are your athletes best at. Be on the second page there, Paul, please. You have speed, you have size.
Come on, Paul, keep up here. Keep up.
Hey,
are you tough? Are you smart, creative, unselfish? Where are your kids at? You have to make that evaluation, and you got to be realistic and make sure you get them in the right spots. You can't put people in the wrong spots and expect things to happen. It just doesn't work like that. And then you certainly have to evaluate what your strengths are on offense and be realistic to yourself. So a kind of a quote to live by is, you can only sustain drives by running plays dictated by your talent level. We kind of all know that, but sometimes we have to be brought back to reality that your playbook may not be designed for who you have on the field. So check that out. Couple notes there then. Properly evaluate your player skills, get them in the right positions, and then run the plays, coaches, that are going to be most successful for your talent level. That's critical for you to be able to sustain those drives. The big one here, and I think almost most important besides getting your players in the right positions, is executing plays. We've all seen great plays called, but they were poorly executed. Fakes weren't carried out properly, or we're not talking about fundamentals here, we're talking about execution. So position ownership is critical. Do your job. You got to find those players that will do their job, be unselfish, and then take pride in doing it right and doing it better every single week, and that will pay attention to your coaching. The question to ask is every position on your team being coached up thoroughly to make the play work to its full potential? And the head coach is responsible for that, but your assistant coaches are your dudes that get in there and make sure that's happening. And they should be watching the play, not watching the play, but watching the position execution in practice as you scrimmage and in games, and then correcting that as quickly as possible or taking note of it to make sure that your execution gets cleaned up. That's important to run a perfect play for you to be able to move the ball. And then reps, man, reps. You've got to rep this thing like crazy. In basketball, you warm up making a million layups, and plays is no different. You need to be able to rep that play cleanly, and demand perfection when you're coaching that play, and do it over and over until the kids get it right. And then critical part of that is doing that play at full speed. Half speed doesn't get it done. It's the full speed that maximizes your progress, your forward progress down the field. Hey, I always had a philosophy that the first 3 weeks of practice was going to be 70% focus on offense. If you can't fly, then you're not going to fly. And it's a Blue Angels concept. Those guys were flying, a foot apart, going 400 miles an hour. They're flying towards each other at 400 miles an hour. And those mistakes are expensive. So you've got to practice it. You've got to do it right. And once you can fly your ship, you got a chance. And you're going to be able to move the football. And then in season, we would drop back to just 60% focus with fine tunes, tweaks, and creating options. So a couple things to think about. A lot of you coaches aren't in school. You don't teach school. You don't see your kids all day until practice. I happen to be fortunate to see them all day. And I knew my kids were going to execute cleanly when I saw them talking football during my classes or watching the huddle. And that's a critical step towards clean execution and finish and drives, because those tweaks and fine tunes come from them. And then they become, those are ownership marks that are left by them. And you really can get good at getting first downs and touchdowns. B on that one, are your play action plays deceptive or are they broken? I think you have to evaluate those. If it's taken longer than 3.5, 4 seconds to get that ball off, then you've got a broken play. And you need to either fix it or throw it out. Because I don't think many of us have a broken play on our card when we call it. So maybe take a look at that. And then C, depth and width of your player alignments is critical to success. With blocking, deception, using space, as we have a big field out there, 53 yards wide. And I call it the factor crap concept. And I have those own depths in my mind. I know exactly what those are for my ball club in high school. I'm not going to give them away, but I think it's critical in that spacing on the field to utilize them in the right direction. Number 3, experience and time spent by the head coach and offensive coordinators prepping. Those are hours in the off season. Those are hours all week long. Those are Sundays thinking about scenarios and situations against the upcoming team. And if you're a great ball club, you're already thinking about November. And you're preparing there what's going to work and be the best. Some coaches like to script drives. I never did script very many other than some 2-minute drills. Now, that can be effective if you're used to that and that's what you believe in. But if you're going to move the ball and you're going to sustain a drive, you need to have full awareness of down and distance. And a good assistant coach can remind you so you're not always peeking at the board. And then calling plays, that's one less thing for you to do, and they should be right there in your ear, coaching you along there. And then the last one of that, clock and game management. If you're up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, it's not over, not even close, especially in this game. You need to take care of the ball. You need to be wise with the clock. Either keep going crazy and just roll, or pull back and make sure you get first downs with that run game and manage it so that you can finish like your team has gotten you there already. Don't let it be your fault by blowing it. So a couple of things here to think about. Run the same play until they stop you. So many times we stop ourselves as coaches, and we have to discipline ourselves, I think, to just keep calling stuff that's been working. We've all watched a game where a series goes down the field, touchdown is scored, and it was beautiful. It was easy, and they made it look easy. And then next series, to come back with all this play action or this fly sweep or something, it's like, dude, you just scored on that other stuff. Why don't you just go away from it? So it takes a little bit of discipline to figure that out. So a couple of drive essentials. Number 1, focus on getting first downs. I preach that every game. Get first downs and you'll score touchdowns. Call the plays that you practice. Call what you do best. Get the ball to your studs for sure. And coaches, be mentally prepared and think about what you're going to call, because we got to get our kids in the best position to win ball games. And I think the leading causes of stalled out drives on the next slide are penalties, of course, We know a holding call is nothing but a death warrant sometimes, and pass happy calls. I don't know how many games I've been in where I was just smiling to myself as the other team passed themselves into a 3rd and long and pretty quick a punt. Man, it was beautiful. And then we got the ball back. So maybe take a look at some of those things. The run game might be boring, but losing is a lot more boring. So check that on your scale there. And then charity calls and experiment plays have their own place and time. And I think you guys kind of know what I'm talking about there. Last thing to finish up the Coach's Corner tonight, some tips and tricks here. The things that I always like to do: call the same play 2 or 3 times in a row. That's going to keep the ball moving. Avoid left then right play calling fixes. Those are easy to play defense against. Make sure your players' eyes and actions are not giving the play away, and body language is not giving it away. I saw some things in the last few games that I watched here at home where the ball carrier, I knew he was going to be the ball carrier, was working on his elbow sleeves, tightening his chin strap, getting all pretty before the play. And it's like, yep, he's getting the ball. And sure enough, watch for those things because those are easy giveaways. Move some players around while still calling the same play. Those are deadly, and the defense can't pick that stuff up. They're 16 years old. And then use big plays sometimes on first downs or change possessions to get those big scores. I never really like to save my big plays for 3rd down because everybody was ready for it. So the surprise, I call them quick strike plays, were always coming up on first downs or change of possession. And just remember that you just got to keep doing things better. And your number of drive to score ratios are going to go up, I think, if you follow some of these things. And I may be preaching to the choir to many of you, but he who has the most points wins. So good luck. And that's all from Kirkland's Coach's Corner this week.
Hey, thanks, Coach.
Is that all right?
We'll probably cut that out, put it up all by itself. And
Yeah.
I have an update for you guys.
And I guess if
Welpon
anybody
is
wants
much
to,
closer to Spokane than I realized, which is bad because I'm from Spokane. That's my hometown. But Welpon, It's a lot closer to Spokane than I thought. A little closer to Davenport, for those of you who are familiar with Eastern Washington.
All right.
well,
Well, Coach,
if any coaches want a copy of that, you're welcome to text me or email me. I'm welcome to share that graphic with you.
okay. And while you were saying it, I actually thought of some specific things when you were talking about one, go back to a play if it worked. And I'm pretty sure it was Valley who would run a play and it was successful, even though he didn't catch it, right? They would go right back to it because the opportunity was there to catch it. He just missed it. And I noticed they were going back to plays back to back that technically worked and until the defense made them stop. And they didn't for the most part. And the other thing I noticed earlier this year was, you're mentioning, his sleeves and getting ready for it. Well, on the other end of that, for instance, a wide receiver who's out and it's going to be a run play. He just stood there. I mean, he didn't even really look like he was going to go. He just kind of stood there like, well, I'm not going to run and waste my energy because it's going to be a run play. So on both sides of that, one, if you're the guy running the play, don't give it away. And if you're off the play, you should still be acting like you're on it, right?
Yeah. Execution. And when your kids get pride in that and they become actors is what I call them, then you're going to win Emmy Awards. And those are 6 points.
Perfect. That was excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Coach. And you can look forward to that every single week from now on. So we're just picking the brain of Lane Kirkland and extracting all of those years of veteran knowledge. So thank you.
Fun to share.
Well, take a minute right now to like and share so that others can enjoy this as well. Again, this is the Idaho Sports 8-man Prepcast. Let's move south down to the Rocky Mountain Conference, guys. District 5 and 6, kind of recap a couple games that happened last week there. Rockland beat Chalice 36-0. Perman, 19 carries, 134 yards, 4 touchdowns. Anybody with the last name Perman in Rockland is going to be a great athlete, male or female. It's actually in the bylaws of the town's charter. North Gem beat Water Springs 70-6. Yost 15 carries, 188 yards, 3 touchdowns. Hatch 17 carries, two touchdowns. I mean, just a run-heavy team scoring a lot of touchdowns to kind of solidify Rockland and North Gem as two of the top teams to beat down there. So let's take a look at the long pin. And the long pin, Council 56, Notice 26, Tri-Valley 64, Mackey 0, Salmon River 36, Lewiston 6, and Cascade 28, Idaho City 6. Will, this kind of went to chalk games 1 through 4 there in the long pin, didn't it?
Oh, it did. It's shaping up to be a crazy race coming up there. You've got, Council is I mean, they're loaded. They're good. They got the players that that were there last year, and they got some new guys that are making names for themselves this year. And when you got Vining and Crowell at guards / defensive ends, that's going to be a tough matchup for anybody. The team we don't know a lot about yet, just because they haven't played that much, is Garden Valley. They had one game canceled, and then they've had their bye week already. So while some teams have played 4 games, they've only played a couple, and they've got some real interesting games coming up. And we talked about it I think it was last week, Coach. If I'm off, tell me. This conference could finish 1 through 6 exactly the same way as it did last year, and yet be an extremely, extremely tighter conference, because the bottom half, you're talking about Salmon River, you're talking about Cascade, and you're talking about Horseshoe Bend. Those 3 teams have made up a lot of ground. Those top 3 teams, Tri-Valley, Garden Valley, and Council, are still all very good. But I think that what we're going to see when we start getting into league games is games that maybe you're expecting to be along the lines of 50-0. Maybe they're more like 40-20. You know what I mean? And in 40-20, that's very much a competitive football game. That long pin, it's going to be a dogfight. I don't know exactly how it's going to turn out, but I think you've got 3 teams that can make a legitimate claim to winning that conference championship, and the other 3 teams can make a legitimate claim, hey, we're going to be a tough out, and we're going to be in the mix to maybe get an at-large bid in the playoffs when this thing's all said and done.
Yeah, for sure. The thing I love about the Long Pin Conference in the fall football is it's muddy. It always gets muddy up there, man. I remember going to some games in Cambridge and watching some stuff in Tri-Valley, and it's like, mud, rains. It's shaping up to be some really good football there between those top teams there. And like you say, those bottom teams have made up a lot of ground, having some success. And that's fun to watch. And maybe this is the year that the long pin represents.
Speaking of that, guys, Will, in your 3 Stars article this week, you said, and I want to read this for everybody. It says, I'm assuming everybody already read it because it's Will Hoeneke's 3-star awards. But these are the arguments to be made for the best / strongest / deepest, pick your adjective, conference in 8-man football. Here's a sleeper, the 1A long pin. The conference as a whole, 11-3. None of its teams are under 500, and its 3 losses are to Kamei, Genesee, and Rimrock, whose combined record is 6-2. Tri-Valley leads the way at 3-0 overall after topping Mackey this weekend, and Salmon River, who had lost 10 straight games, has won its last 2, including Friday's win over Lewis County. The 1A classification looks to be wide open statewide this year, and the long pin has multiple teams with a chance to make a move come November. That's pretty bold, looking at the recent history of the long pin.
I mean, I agree with myself, frankly, to get that out in front. I've seen a couple of those teams play already this year. I think Council, as long as they take care of the ball, they're big, they're strong, they're physical. You got Owen Hatfield, you got Garrett Zielinski, you've got Decker McLean, you've got talented skill kids there. Trevor Korn in Garden Valley, I think, is one of the better players in the entire classification, offense and defense. Jace Wagner, Tri-Valley, he's looking like he might be one of the better players in the conference. I think he had two touchdown runs and an interception return for a touchdown in the first quarter against Mackey on Saturday, that meet in the middle game in Gooding. There's a lot of good football teams there, and with Council out, with Kendrick up, with Kendrick being up in the 2A classification, the 1A party is there are a lot more teams that are going to feel like, hey, we can do this now. And I think you've got Cary and Dietrich. I think you've got Rockland. I think you've got Wallace. I think you've got Lakeside. And then I think you've got potentially 3 teams out of the long pin, all of whom I think have very legitimate claims to say, hey, we're going to get that banner this year. and it could be any of them. It really could.
Yeah, it's good to come down, I think, to who's going to stay the healthiest the rest of the middle of the season here and finishing strong, and we'll see how they play out in Max Preps and in their own districts. So it's looking fun, more fun every week.
Speaking of Max Preps, Will, you actually found something pretty interesting with Max Preps about an hour ago.
Yeah, I did. Max Preps, I wanted to go look and see if they had their 1A, their first 1A rankings up, since that's how the at-large teams are selected, is based on the Max Preps rankings. The 1A classification isn't up yet. It says they need another week before they can grade them out. The 2A was up, and Butte County was number 1. I believe Glens Ferry was number 3. Kendrick was number 4. I think that had mostly to do with number of games played as much as anything. The thing that I found interesting is that if the season ended today, 2 of the teams that would get at-large berths are Centennial Baptist and Lighthouse Christian. You know what those 2 teams have in common?
That's weird. What?
They're not playing football. They don't have teams.
But besides that,
this has been, and I've been very vocal about it. I don't mind that they've gone the route of, at-large teams, and rather than pre-seeding and predetermining, okay, 3 teams from this league, 4 teams from that league. I'm fine with that. But when you get into a situation where Max Preps has a team ranked 9th in the state that doesn't even have a team, I think we need to evaluate what we're doing here. And go ahead and say, and Coach, this goes back to something you were just saying on Coach's Corner. Oh, what's the big deal? It's just a mistake. It's only week 3. Get it right. Do it right. Get it right. Attention to detail. And this is a pretty significant miss when it comes to attention to detail. When 2 teams, what's next? Genesis Prep against Liberty Charter for the state championship? Where are we going here?
I would watch that. And just to kind of show that, Lighthouse is in number 11, 12 Rimrock, 13 Kamei, 14 Hagerman, 15 Prairie. So they rank ahead of some pretty darn good teams for not fielding a team.
Yeah. I know it's not up to date. The Kerry coaches were talking about it earlier this week, and I didn't know what was going on with that, but it's not done yet. It's not right. So hopefully they hurry up and get that fixed, because people care, man. People care. They want to see where they're at right now. It's pride.
Guys, we got a few comments coming in. Gary Jones, of course, the statesman of Idaho sports. He was our very first broadcaster back in 2005.
Yep.
And Go Lumberjacks. And, of course, his wife, Penny, is from Council. Joel, Paul's fading, not finishing. Okay, so I missed a couple of the slide things. I apologize. You can do better, Joel. All right. And then Porter Whipple came in saying, let's go, Kamei Cubs. So if you want to get your comment in, just comment wherever you're watching this. Let's take a commercial break, and when we get back, we'll return with the 2A breakdown. We're going to talk about Ideal. The Ideal College Savings Program is you can enter the Ideal and 8-man Prepcast drawing for a chance to receive a $529 contribution to an Ideal Idaho Education Savings Account. Can be used for college, trade school, apprenticeships, graduate programs, and more nationwide. No account needed to enter. Contest is limited to families with children attending or planning to attend a 1A or 2A public or private school. If they're ranked in Max Preps or not, it doesn't matter. It must be entered by October 25th. Winner will be announced on November 1st. So thank you to Ideal. We'll talk about them a little bit more later in the show. But before that, we'll be right back here on the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast.
This year, help dreams come true with the Ideal Idaho 529 Education Savings Program. Our easy-to-use tools make it simple to plan for your child's education. With tax benefits, ownership flexibility, Ideal is the perfect way to save for college, trade school, K-12 education, and student loan repayment. Join us at our next webinar to learn more about the 529 plan. Enrolling takes just 15 minutes, and you can start with just $25. Visit idsaves.org if you would like to learn more.
All right, welcome back. There is the URL you can go to. You can also go to our Facebook page. Logan posted something about it this morning if you're too lazy to type in the URL. And also, if you go to any 1A or 2A schedule on IdahoSports.com, there's a banner there. You can click it, fill out the form, and you're entered. The drawing is going to be in November. I mean, $529 in a college savings program. You kidding? Why not? Go for it. I'd love to have that back in the day. Sure, I didn't go to college, but for my kids, it'd have been nice, right?
Yeah. Yep. Especially when you got 38 of them.
Yeah, there was. It kind of feels that way, actually. So let's take a look at the 2A. Of course, this is the 8-man Prepcast. Paul Kingsbury, Will Hoenike, Lane Kirkland. Guys, if Richfield Hansen was our game of the week, this one's got to be a pretty close second. Oakley came into this game 0-2, losing to Grace 50-8, and Kendrick 74-8. Raft River was 2-0, beating Grace 56-42, and Notice 60-8. Raft River beat Oakley 44-32. Being down 2 points at halftime, tied up in the third, that has to be a silver lining for Oakley, who's had a pretty rough start this season, right, Will?
Yeah, I'm sure they don't want to hear the term moral victory, but they got it handed to them pretty good those first couple of weeks, and then to have your rival coming into town, big game, Oakley, Raft River, and to trade punches with them and to show what I think a lot of people expected them to be all year. Jackson Rice had a nice game. Tim Short, big game receiving. They were able to make some things happen. And I think that it's important, and Coach, you can speak to this a lot more with your experience. When you're in a little bit of a funk, sometimes the thing you need is you just need something positive to build off of. And this was essentially, I want to say Oakley had a 2-point lead with about 6 minutes to go in the game. And so now their coaching staff can turn to their kids and say, hey, look, we tighten up just a couple of things. We would have beaten a top 5 team. We can do this. Now let's go to work. And the schedule makers do them no favors. They play, Valley, and then I think they play Oregon State next week, and I think they play the Green Bay Packers the week after that.
Like they have a shot to win that one then.
Yeah.
This is something that they can build on after a really, really rough start.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Coach Evans a couple of days ago, and his first words were, man, that Oakley team is tough. And he complimented Tim Short for getting all those receiving yards. And I know Tim Short from track and field, and from Timberline High School is where he came from when he was a freshman. And man, he has improved over and over. And it looks like he got a lot of yards and a lot of caught passes, and kept the Hornets in that thing as long as they could. So I think that's a good bonus for Oakley, and some positive things. And then Coach Evans talked about Kai Ward, and he said, man, all I did was tell that kid, you need to go out for track and field and you're going to get faster. And he left it alone, because sometimes that's a dead horse. But Kai did, and he did get faster. And he says, I can't believe how much faster he is. And so you football coaches, you all know, you got fast kids, you're going to win, because speed kills, and track develops that. I'm a track coach, and I preach that up and down. And so Kai Ward, again, leading the Trojans, but spreading it around a lot more. The other players contributing as well. And Coach Evans couldn't stop praising the camaraderie, the team unity, and the love they all have for each other this year. He says the best they've had since he's been a head coach there. And man, he's just you could hear him smiling through the phone. He was just happy how his ball club is playing, and to get out with the win from that cross-district rival that's been there maybe since the 1700s.
Yeah, and they're 3-0. They're in a really good spot right now. So we can talk up Oakley. The moral victory. Raft River can say, yeah, we got the victory. And when you start talking about getting one of those top 4 seeds in the 2A state playoffs, potentially winning a district championship, Raft River's put themselves in a really good spot.
Oh, they absolutely have.
Yeah.
And Raft River, good year in, year out. Said that about Oakley for, how many years, year in and year out. So to see Oakley building that, getting into the middle part of the season, it's almost it is halfway over. This is really when the games start to count. So to see them, really put their game together, so to speak. I've always been kind of an Oakley fan. I'm not a huge fan of anyone, of course, but I like Oakley. They're one of those teams that I've always enjoyed watching. They're fun to watch. and they're easy to call because the last names are the same for the last 20 years. There's Becky's, there's all those that just come through that are always the same. So, and
since the 1700s, yeah.
Since they stepped off the Mayflower, those last names in Oakley have been the same for sure.
Them Oakley Pilgrims.
Wait, Pilgrims. Wait. So let's look at the rest of the Snake River Conference. Valley beat Hagerman in a good. I mean, Hagerman's got a good team. I was at that Kendrick Hagerman game with Scott Burton last year, and I just felt so bad for Hagerman because they have. And last year they had such a great team, and you get to play Kendrick. Congratulations on having a great season, and that's where it ended. So coming in this year, Hagerman's one of those teams we're looking forward to. Hagerman led it at the end of the first, 22-14. Second and third quarters, Valley just kind of took over, outscored Hagerman 20-6 in the second, 22-12 in the third quarter to win. But Josh Hardy, quarterback, son of Brian Hardy. There at Valley, 233 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. But the good news for Valley here is Vargas Christensen, 22 carries, 208 yards, 4 catches for Christensen, 80 yards. They got the run to go a little bit more consistently. And they were a dangerous team before this. We watched them play Prairie a couple of weeks ago in Fruitland, and Josh Hardy was our player of the game. Will, he had 6 touchdowns, I think, somewhere in there. Yep. I interviewed him after the game, midfield, and it was probably, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've interviewed an athlete that wasn't a foot taller than me. And it was nice interviewing Josh Hardy because he was maybe 2 inches taller. So it was great. It was great. I asked him where he got his athleticism from, and he just said his mom and dad. He kind of chickened out there. So
politician, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely in the works for it. So for Hagerman, Maven Camp, 250 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Gonzalez, Kendall, a lot of carries, a lot of yards, touchdowns. So, Valley, if they can, like I said, if they can get those 2 things meshing every game, I say watch out for Valley.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Coach Ayers for a little bit, and he had the same things to say about his team that Coach Evans did. He says the seniors are leading here so amazingly. They're working together, and that 3-headed offensive monster is starting to cut some major teeth right now and really find themselves. He gave some credit to his middle linebacker that caused some fumbles in that game in the second half to kind of tip the table a little bit, and then they just turned on the Jets to finish strong. The one thing I liked about Coach Ayers, I said, well, you're coming up here on Oakley here, and they're kind of licking wounds left and right, just so to speak. And he says, no, they're not, Coach. You never underestimate Oakley. They're the conference champs until you take that away. And I really appreciated him. That's just how Coach Ayers is. Nothing for granted. He's preparing for the Super Bowl, and I think I'm going to go watch that game tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one for sure. Looking forward, at the end of this show, we're going to look at the games coming up, and that's definitely one that you had mentioned that you're looking forward to. And I really think that's going to win or lose. I think it's going to be a kind of a bellwether game for Oakley to see if last week scoring those 34 points, can they do it again? And if they can, that's 2 in a row, putting points on the board. Like I said, win or lose, that shows that they can put up the points. And moving forward, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, so many tough teams in that league once again this year, and man, it's going to be a war, and we're not even to the playoffs yet. So
yeah,
hang on and enjoy the show.
The rain hasn't started falling yet. We still have a couple more games.
Yeah. Yep.
So Kingsbury, they beat Wilder 82-0. Landon Stewart, 6 of 8, 2 touchdowns. Samano, 6 carries, 3 touchdowns. Sterling, 3 catches and a touchdown. So Kingsbury, the Pilots, the hometown of Leif Morrison is really their claim to fame. Executive director of the Idaho Bowl, friend of the program here, went to Kingsbury, and they were so good for so long, and then you saw them take that dive, and it's great to see them coming back out of that. Will, it's one of those teams where you and I are old enough to remember when they were, in the playoffs year in and year out, and I always like to see those teams make their way back into it. And defeating Wilder 82-0, okay, but 82 points doesn't matter who you're playing. That's a lot of points to put up.
Well, 82 points without Josiah Valencia and no Aaron De Leon. Those are 2 of their better players, and they didn't even play in the game. And I was able to talk to Coach Duty at Wilder a little bit, and he's like, He's like, they're legit, man. I mean, I think a lot we've again, something else we've talked about on this show. They were preseason picked towards the bottom of this conference, and we've said from the beginning, it's not because they're a bad team. It's because the conference has the looks of being loaded, and that's 2 coaches in a row now. Coach Hutchins up at Clearwater Valley has said, "Hey, I think Glenns Ferry's pretty dang good," and now Coach Duty at Wilder saying, "Hey, I think Glenns Ferry's pretty darn good." When you're talking about running clocks in the second half, we can make all the jokes we want. It's not as easy to score 82 points as you think. Not that teams are going out there trying to run up the score and whatnot. You've still got to execute to do it, and they were able to do it without 2 of their better players, 2 of their more explosive players. You know, I think they got some people's attention last week. I really do. I think that there are a few coaches in that District 4 that are looking around going, hey, maybe we better break out an extra bit of film work on that Glenns Ferry team and figure out what they're doing there so we don't get caught off guard.
No, absolutely. And one thing I noticed in the 8-man ranks more than probably, especially the upper, the 6A, 5As, 4As, is coaches pay attention to the rest of the state. You get, of course, teams are going to be looking at, teams that are up, if you're a SIC team, you're going to be looking at what's going on in Coeur d'Alene or at Highland, but you're really focused on your conference first and foremost. But you talk, like Coach, you talk to these coaches from all over, and they know, you mentioned Will, you talked to Coach Hutchins up in Clearwater Valley and Hoenike. He's talking about Glenns Ferry, which is almost as south as you can go before you hit Nevada in Idaho. And win, lose, hate, love, there's this respect between 8-man programs and coaches that I really sets them apart from the rest, from the 11-man game, I think.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of friendships out there in the 8-man game, a lot of respect and a lot of good talks take place to them. Not a lot of ego, I don't think, because it's from week to week and you get handed what you have and you do your best. But it's really a lot of respect, and it's great to be able to reach out and to visit with so many across the state and to hear positive comments about other ball clubs. So that's great sportsmanship as well.
It surprises me that Will is such an 8-man guy because he has so much ego that it clashes with the lack of ego in the 8-man ranks. So it's kind of a yin yang, opposites attract, maybe. Something
Look
like
at
that.
you guys with your fancy settings and me with the fridge. Sorry, fridge is over there.
Well, technically, I've got nothing. It's a blank wall.
You're talking about how you're going to paint it and put all your hats up. So,
the Idaho Sports.
Josh,
HQ
if you're watching,
moved.
I don't have anything on the stove tonight. Okay, go ahead.
Idaho HQ moved in the last couple of months, so now I've just got to redo the set, and we'll get there. So let's move on. Let's recap Butte County's win over Murtaugh, guys. Butte County won 67-16. Another program that is doing very well under a guy who doesn't have an ego. Right? He's just a good guy putting in the work there. Sam doing a great job. Archibald, 76 yards. And, of course, Razor Duke. And if I'm correct, Razor's middle name is Rifle. So Razor Rifle Duke at Butte County. Yeah. The award for best name. There's no second place. 6 carries, 176 yards, 2 touchdowns. Twitchell, 9 carries, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. Crosh, much of the same. So Butte County rolled Murtaugh 67-16. They've got a bye this week. Coach, have you seen Butte County play this week? I've seen them play once, maybe twice. They're a good football team again this year as returning champs. Yeah,
they were here in Cary a few weeks ago. Got to see them get things started over here. They have so many weapons. That is a 4-headed monster, in my opinion, between those guys and Coden Crosh at receiver. They're just getting better every week, refining things here and there. And I think they can find a motive, as they did last year, whatever that is. If it's just for the pride of Butte County High School, find it. And I think they're going to go a really long ways if they can continue to do great things. And that's a lot of points to put up, but they're executing well and keeping the ball rolling.
Let's take a look at the White Pine League. White Pine, there's always great teams in the White Pine. It doesn't matter year in, year out. It kind of trades places sometimes. Logos is the team to beat up there. They beat Kamei 64-20. Seamus Wilson, 12 of 15, 257 yards, 4 touchdowns.
Logos is the team to beat?
Yeah.
I wonder if Zane Hobart heard that.
Zane doesn't watch this.
Oh.
I don't think anybody in Kendrick watches this. I think
you better hope not. You just gave me bulletin board material for days.
Logos was the team to beat in the game against Kamei is what I meant before you cut me off. Dang it, Will.
Oh, man.
All right.
I just got a message from
we'll cut that out in post.
He says, Paul Hobart says, Paul, I don't know. What
he hasn't texted me yet.
Oh, okay.
I'll wait for it.
Oh, man.
Thanks.
You better hope for the softer, kinder Zane Hobart.
Is there any other kind?
We'll find out.
Little side note, during that Hagerman game last year, Kendrick Hagerman actually texted him during the game about a particular call that might have gone the other way, and I texted him, and he texted me back during the game on the side. Yeah, that. And he's up up 120 points, and he's like, yeah, that was garbage. Yeah, it's great. He's a competitive guy, and I love it. Love those guys, him and his dad. So, Will, can I get back to it, or do you have more to talk?
Go ahead.
All right. Logos had 605 yards. That's a lot of offense, no matter who you are, for the win there. Kamei, of course, led by David Clute, coach's son, 3 touchdown passes. And they're going to be going up against Prairie this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Potlatch beat Clearwater Valley 48-20. Jay Marshall, 4 of 8, 62 yards, 12 carries, a touchdown, and Redmond, 3 rushing touchdowns as well. Clearwater Valley, you love the Rams. You mentioned Alan Hutchinson. Hutch, great friend of the program, a great athletic director, sends out emails every day to us to make sure things are done. They're having a bit of a rough go at it this year, but they're going to get better. And he called me the other night, a couple of Fridays ago. It was like midnight. He's like, hey, I knew you'd still be up. And he just wanted to talk about his team, how, they're keeping their heads up and they're getting better. And his outlook on the season was still positive. And I love it. I love coaches like that. I love teams like that. And that it rubs off onto the team. If your coach is, all right, guys, let's play hard. Let's play hard. The kids know what that means. But if your coach is there, guys, we can win this. Let's just keep getting better. That absolutely, that positive attitude, that PMA, positive mental attitude, rubs off on the players. Am I wrong, Coach?
No, how the coach goes is how the game kind of goes, and it really does. Your confidence can lead your team to the greater things than they ever could expect, and that really shines forth in your positivity. Really can take them in a whole great direction. So, yeah, it's important.
Well, Prairie came away with a win last week as well against Lapway, 68-14. A lot of points put up by Prairie. Good to see. We watched them in Fruitland in our Gem State game of the week a couple weeks ago, and Hasselstrom didn't even stick around after the game to talk. It was he had some things he had to think about. So, looking at that, 68-14 against conference rival Lapway, it had to feel good for him. McElroy, 180 yards, 3 touchdowns. Great. Schumacher had a receiving touchdown and a rushing touchdown. You were able to talk or get a text email from Hasselstrom. Did he have any particular thoughts about this game, Coach?
He just said that they're playing really well, and his defense held opponents to under 50 yards. His first team defense did, and so he was well pleased with that. And all he had to say is we're looking forward to preparing for Kamei. It's a pivotal game coming up this week, and he was moving straight to that game.
Yeah, he told me it's a must-win game. It's an absolute must-win game for them. Of course, he took a couple years off, and he's back now with the program, his second stint. Will, you wrote most or if not all of the 8-man football previews, and a kind of a common notion among coaches was, oh, Hasselstrom's back. Yeah. Prairie. Let's put them at the top of the list.
Yeah, there were several coaches from multiple angles that when we were asking for, hey, who's a team you kind of got your eye on? Who's a potential sleeper team? And there were a handful of coaches that didn't hesitate. Hey, Hasselstrom's back at Prairie. You gotta you got to factor them in. He's a win, maybe 2 wins just on his own. He's that good of a coach, and they're in a spot right now where you've got Logos and Prairie. I think have kind of separated themselves as the top of the White Pine, if not, along with Butte County, probably the top of the 2A classification. But Prairie's still very much in the hunt for a playoff spot and a potentially a decent seed, and beating a good Kamei team, Porter Whipple, if you're still watching.
He is.
Kamei is a really good team as well. So these are 2 teams that both of these are going to circle this game and say, that's one that was good for us, or boy, that's one I wish we would have got. This is an important matchup positioning-wise for both teams.
Yeah, and overall, it looks like there's kind of a 3-tiered system in the White Pine right now. There's tier 1, which is Kendrick and Logos, in that order, Will. Just saying. Tier 2, Kamei, Potlatch, Prairie, and then tier 3, Lapway, Clearwater Valley, Troy. Now, the question to me, guys, is what order will that second tier finish in? Okay, you've got Kendrick and Logos. Okay, great. But Kamei, Potlatch, Prairie, seems like any given week they could beat each other if they were to play. So the top 5 teams, they should all make the playoffs this year regardless. Right, Will? But what about that middle tier?
I would say good chance all 5 are playoff teams. And I think the thing that when you're talking about that middle tier is all 3 of those teams are really well coached. Nels Clute, Ryan Ball, Ryan Hasselstrom. You're talking about 3 exceptionally well coached programs. If you're going to ask me which way I'm going to lean, I think I might lean Prairie a little bit just because of the Hasselstrom factor, and with Levi Gehring and McElroy, and they've got a host of kids who can make plays, and as they get dialed in as the season goes on, I might give them a tiny edge, but they could come in just about any order, and it wouldn't shock me.
All right, guys, let's take a look at District 3's Western Idaho Conference. It's going to be quick because everybody lost again except Rimrock. They defeated Horseshoe Bend 40-22. So with a lot of opportunities to pick up some non-conference wins squandered out the windows. Kind of looks like a one-bid league. Will, what are your thoughts on that? And Coach, after Will's done, kind of follow up with anything you have to add about that.
I think we came into the season, I think we were all in agreement on this show that it was Notice's league to lose. But in hearing from head coach Joe Woodland earlier this year, they've already lost 4 starters for the year to an assortment of injuries, and you just cannot take that much out of an 8-man program. He said, our numbers are good. He's very happy with his depth, and he's very happy with his younger players. It's just some of them are going to have to grow up really quickly for Notice to get that one spot that I think will come out of the White Pine, or I'm sorry, out of the Western Idaho Conference. Flip side of the coin, your other teams, your Idaho City, your Wilder, your Rimrock, you see that door is cracked open and you have a chance to go kick it down. And I think Rimrock is kind of the obvious choice if you're expecting someone to actually kick that door down and knock Notice off the top of the hill, so to speak. But they've still got to do it, because if something happens to those teams injury-wise, the scenario changes again. But yeah, I do think it's a one-team league. It could still be Notice. I don't want to automatically just write them off and throw them on the garbage heap. I don't think that's fair. But at the same time, the race just got a hell of a lot more interesting, unfortunately, because Notice had those injuries.
Yeah, I agree with Will. I still believe Notice has got the depth to pull this thing off, but they're going to have to really raise those younger kids fast to be prepared for a Rimrock that seems to be doing really well and raging and ready to take this thing over. So we'll see how that plays out.
Guys, before we take our last commercial break and kind of wrap this up, we did have a comment I wanted to look at. This is from Howard Wood. He'd like our thoughts on bye weeks and trying to get games scheduled for schools. He's a Butte County alum and fan, and we have some bye weeks, for instance, this week for Butte County. So, Coach, when you were coaching, did you like those bye weeks? Did you not? Did you like to play every week? What are your thoughts on those bye weeks?
I always liked a bye week after the first 4 games. I mean, that just seemed being perfect there. And hopefully you had your bye week before you played a tough conference matchup. They could give you a little extra to go, but those bye weeks are hard coming off of. I never really enjoyed a bye week. I'd rather just keep rolling, but you have to have them. And the worst place to have them, I think, is towards the end of the season when you're just getting things figured out. But you take them where they're given to you and assigned.
I guess the only flip side to that is if you have some injuries that aren't, quote, serious, but that one extra week going into the playoffs, you get that jammed finger allowed to heal, that little tweaked ankle allowed to heal. That might be the only perk, I guess, to having a bye late in the season.
And Butte County and Grace in a 2-team conference, so you've got to fill 7 non-conference games. And sometimes it's just kind of the unfortunate reality. Dates don't line up real well. Grace played Adrian, Oregon, a powerhouse team out of Oregon this past week. They met in the middle in Twin Falls and played. So you do what you can to get games. I'm sure Coach Thorngren would rather be not taking a couple of bye weeks every year too. I'm sure he'd rather play if possible.
Oh, and some of those small Oregon schools like the Jordan Valleys, like the Adrians, they have to pick up those Idaho games or they're not going to get a schedule, right? And it's the same up north with those Washington teams and eastern Idaho with Wyoming and even some Montana up north. So it's an interesting geographic state to be sure. But yeah, those bye weeks. Hopefully we answered that question, Howard. We appreciate you getting your comment in. So we're going to take a break and return with a look at this week's 8-man games from around the state. Stick around. It's the 8-man Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
Later.
This is here. Girl, thank you.
Hello?
I was in an accident.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I have my seatbelt on.
This year, help dreams come true with the Ideal Idaho 529 Education Savings Program. Our easy-to-use tools make it simple to plan for your child's education. With tax benefits, ownership flexibility, Ideal is the perfect way to save for college, trade school, K-12 education, and student loan repayment. Join us at our next webinar to learn more about the 529 plan. Enrolling takes just 15 minutes and you can start with just $25. Visit idsaves.org if you would like to learn more.
All right, welcome back to the Idaho 8-man Prepcast. Let's take a look at what's coming up this weekend. This is Thursday night? This week flew by. So tomorrow night, let's take a look at some games going on. First up in the 2As, guys, we've got Idaho City at Chalice, Kendrick at Clearwater Valley. We got Glens Ferry at Grace. That's going to be a good one. Rockland at Hagerman, Potlatch at Lapway. That Kamei Prairie game we talked about, Murtaugh at Raft River, Rimrock at Tri-Valley, Logos at Troy, Oakley at Valley, and Notice Wilder. There's a few games to watch here, guys, but kind of want to go back to that Kamei Prairie game. It's going to be a good one. Mentioned we talked to Coach Hasselstrom earlier, and he said it's a must-win game for those guys, not only for the standings, but also for max preps, because they will take out those 2 extra teams. The points do matter. You beat a team that comes in, has a tough schedule. So there's all these things that coaches have to think about, and Coach Hasselstrom already thinking about that end of season max preps ranking for this one.
Yeah, talking to Coach Hasselstrom at the state track meet and hearing that he was coming back, you could see the glisten in his eye. Like, I am so excited to get back into this game, and I think he's going to have a great season, and he's continuing to prepare hard each week. And as I get these messages from him, I can just feel his satisfaction in his team and his enthusiasm for the game. But you can't write off Kamei. They've been around, and they're big kids and strong. And Coach Glood will be prepared as well. So that'll be a great battle up there in the north.
All right, let's take a look at the 1A games for Friday night. Shoshone at Camas County, Garden Valley at North Gem, St. Joseph, Utah, visiting Water Springs there in Idaho Falls, Dietrich at Castle Ford, Idaho City at Chalice, Court of Christ at Clark Fork, way up north, Lewis County visits Genesee, Rockland at Hagerman, Cary at Richfield, Deary at Timberline Weehite, Rimrock at Tri-Valley, and St. John Endicott there in Washington. We'll visit Wallace, also way up north. Now, like the 2As, there's a lot of pretty interesting games this Friday night, guys. In my view, Shoshone-Camas County is kind of a de facto elimination game for playoff consideration. Will, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it very well could be. I think both those teams are going to have to punch through against somebody to get into that top 12 to get there. But it's a win that they need. Camas County suffering some injuries and losing some players in the offseason, not to mention that tremendous senior class. It's they've got to get things moving in the right direction again with Coach Walter. I think they will. And then Coach Nunley at Shoshone. Okay, we got to win. They got to win, and then they had a bye week. How do we keep moving it forward? How do we keep improving here? How do we keep getting better? That is a pivotal matchup for both those teams because Camas isn't going to want to slip too far down the ladder, but at the same time, I guarantee you, those people in Shoshone are, I'm sure, very loudly saying, "Hey, it's our turn. We need to get back up there," and it starts with the game against Camas County.
No, absolutely. And Coach, you mentioned you're going to go to which game tomorrow night?
I think I'll head to Valley Oakley and see what that's all about over there. Should be a good one. And maybe just a little side note, that St. Joseph team out of Utah, those guys called me about 4 years ago, and they said, "Hey, we're going to start this small school, and wondered what we do. We want to play 8-man football. Who should we play? What are some ideas?" And so I talked to the phone for about an hour. So it's kind of exciting to see that they're alive and well and playing the 8-man game in down south.
Look at the influence you have. You don't build your own program. You build others in other states.
State lines.
Man.
Hope they represent. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, you hope. We've got a couple of quick comments coming in. Howard said, "Yep, thank you." So you answered his question perfectly. Appreciate that. Of course, Ty Garrett says, "Roll Tigers," and they must be watching this together. Ty Kep says, "Roll Tigers." Apparently, Coach Hobart is not watching because he hasn't texted me yet. We'll see if that comes later on or not. But before we wrap up, guys, Will, you've been the man behind the Idaho 8-man X account, Twitter account for several years. You write the weekly Idaho 8-man 3-stars feature on IdahoSports.com. But you have a little bit of news for fans that want to get even more coverage from you. What want to talk about that?
We're starting to transition over to Instagram a little bit, and it's not a change. We're not walking away from our roots on X, if you will. It's just hey, what can we do to diversify a little bit and maybe expand a little bit? So I tried to make it as idiot-proof as I could. It's the same Idaho_8_man if you're searching for me. And when all else fails, look for the white background with the black face mask. I tried to make it the same thing on X as it is on Instagram, and we literally just started it like a week ago. So if you look at it and say, "This is dead," they've only got like 3 posts. Yeah, that's true, but more to come.
The more you follow, the more followers, the more content, right?
That's the hope. That's the hope.
One hand holds the other. Now, when can we expect a full-blown website?
I messed around with that a few years ago, and I just didn't have the time at that point to keep it up. So who knows? Maybe sometime soon. I need to see if I know anybody who runs a website who might be able to help me out. You know anybody, Paul?
I don't know. Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
But,
we'll talk about it.
If I think of somebody, I'll let you know for sure. So, that's going to do it for us, guys. A lot of fun. Hopefully I can come back and join you guys in the future sometime down the road. Maybe we can just have Brandon take the night off every Thursday. And I can just hang out with you guys. Be a lot of fun. Yeah. So thanks for joining us again for another episode of what is now officially the most popular 8-man football prepcast in the world. I found out. I Googled it. The IdahoSports.com 8-man prepcast for my good friends, Coach Lane Kirkland and Mr. 8-man himself, Will Hoenike. I'm Paul Kingsbury. Don't forget to join us next Thursday night for another episode, and go out and watch some games tomorrow. Don't just sit at home doing nothing. Get out and watch some games. Even if you don't have any kids playing, if you don't have grandkids, get out and support your local student athletes. Night, everybody.
Later.
Oh, thank you.
Hello?
I was in an accident.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I had my seatbelt on.